QST, QST, QST. This is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey. I guess for a choice of a better name, moderating the 9HAM GlobalNet. This net meets every other Thursday at 8 p.m. Central European Time. And, of course, when Central Europe goes to summertime, it meets at 8 p.m. Central European Summertime, just like it is right now. The net is open to all licensed amateur radio operators. You can access the net via analog, FM, of course, DMR, and Echo Link modes. The link is carried primarily on the 9H1 UHF repeater on a frequency of 430.875 megahertz. The offset is plus 7.6 megahertz, and the CT-CSS tone is 88.5. It is also carried on the 9H1 DMR repeater on a frequency of 430.925 megahertz. The offset of that repeater is 7.6 megahertz, and because it is digital, the color code is color code 1. If you have DMR, you can connect via the Brandmeister system to talk group 2780, which is Malta. If you choose to connect through Echolink, there are two nodes that carry the net. Node 552882, which is the Echolink node for 9H1 UHF, and Echolink node 803800, which is the Echolink node for 9H1 DMR. I'll take a pause. I failed to ask whether there was any emergency or priority traffic for the net. My apologies. I will ask right now and take a short break. Hearing none, welcome to the net. Welcome to the 9HAM GlobalNet. As we said, every 2 weeks, this place, this time. And it's going to carry a different format than it did before. And may not seem like a change, but there is a change. And the change primarily is not a directed net. So all calls do not have to go through net control. We're also planning and trying to get people to present a topic, whether it's ham radio related or not. We'd like to avoid politics and religion, to be very honest. I feel personally that they are very personal and should stay that way. But any other topic that may interest other people who attend the net would be very welcome, and we put some guidelines together, and they're pretty straightforward and simple. And, you know, when you hear these, you'll go say, yeah, this is all obvious. But anyway, if you're going to be presenting a topic, we ask you to be on the net for approximately 1 hour. We ask you to plan on a radio check 10 minutes before the start of the net. The presentation should be limited to 20 minutes or less. I would expect a question and answer session following the presentation. And make sure you stop transmitting every 3 minutes for about 10 seconds to allow all timers on all connected equipment that carries the net to reset. One thing I forgot to say, and I will say this after this last line, please ID with your call sign at least once every 9 minutes during the presentation. And I also forgot to say, because it's not on this text, but I will add it, that the 9HAM GlobalNet is carried on YouTube on the 9HAM GlobalNet page. and a recording of the net will be available approximately 1 day after the net under normal conditions. And that's pretty interesting. The ham radio topics, I mean the topics, ham radio related or not, really, and I will give an address, and actually it's Anthony's email address. He can do that himself. But that's a way to contact us, and any and all topics are welcome. It makes the net more colorful. This is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey. I'm moderating today's session of the 9H Ham Global Net. I will take another short pause and then take check-ins. Keep forgetting that if you get off the the Echolink page, which is the way I connect to the net, pressing the space bar will not disconnect. Alrighty, this is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey, learning as I go with this edition of the 9H Ham Global Net. I will now take check-ins. Press the right button.
Nine Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha, checking in. The name is Anthony.
Nine Hotel 1 Foxtrot Bravo Sierra, Charles. Golf Zero Bravo India Alpha, Ian.
Very good evening to you, Anthony, Charlie, and Ian. Any other check-ins at this point in time? Everybody's at the beach. Oh, it would be fun if somebody took their radio to the beach and connected to the 9H1 UHF or DMR repeater from the beach. I think that would be fun. This is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey. Let me give it out to the floor and see what everybody has to say, or if you have any topics of interest. If not, I might have one or two that might stir some interest, and we'll go from there. This is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey, and as Anthony coined the phrase, back to the floor.
And 7 APW, whatever, floor. This is 9H5FA. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I was hoping to sort of take up the topic of the X thing. I'm not sure if there's anyone, I mean, here in the net at the moment who has experience with that. I don't. So it's an area sort of which fascinates me because I see, you know, the Xing competitions and several people posting to Facebook pages and certificates and whatever. And I would like to sort of get some information about this from people who actually do it firsthand. I'm not sure. I'm just sort of throwing something in the center of the room, which interests me. But so I'm passing this back to the floor. This is 9 Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha.
9H5 Fox Alpha with the group 9H1FBS as part of the floor. That's how I started, Anthony. You could say a few things about that. We have had a respite from the hot weather we had last week, and we had 3 days of beautiful northwesterly maestral wind, which cooled things down a bit and made it very, very pleasant. Say hello to Ian and Anthony and yourself, Jerry, and I'll pass it back over to the floor. I think it's Ian's turn next.
Well, tell us about DX, Charlie.
Well, I started the interest in amateur radio by listening to broadcast stations, the BBC, Radio Switzerland, Radio RSA, South Africa, God knows how many other different stations. Then I started to, those days, the local hams met every Sunday on 80 meters, and my receiver happened to have 80 meters, and they used to meet on AM. And that's how I got interested in amateur radio. And I used to also type out reports for these various broadcast stations and get QSL cards in return. And I think somewhere, if it still exists, I had some pennants from different stations, and it was a very interesting part of the hobby, a very interesting part of how I got interested in ham radio. Of course, in these days of digital DMR, etc., I don't have an HF station anymore, but when I used to have an HF station, I used to look for rare stations, and I made contact with many different countries all over the world, depending on propagation, of course. When propagation is good, you can get real nice signal reports from practically anywhere in the world. And I worked as far as Australia and the States, South America, Africa, parts of Africa, Asia, Europe, of course, and also some DXpeditions which used to be on, and it was when I had the TS440, I could do split, receive on one frequency and transmit on another. Most of these DXpeditions, as they call them, operate split. They stay on one frequency and then listen up or down according to their desire. And sometimes I've got some very good ones. I don't remember, but it used to be fun. It's like fishing, you know. You put your bait and your hook and hope to get something. And especially when these DXpeditions are about, it is very, very difficult because many stations are trying to work them. As I said, depending on propagation. If propagation is good, it's really, really fun. And just giving you some background, 9H1FBS.
Yeah, very good, Charlie. So you were talking about shortwave listening and also the expeditions. Ian, good evening to you. I hope everything is well. I hope all is well with you. Do you do any DXing? Do you do anything different? N7APW on the net.
And 7APW. Good evening, Jerry. Good evening to you, Charles. 9 1 FPS, and hello to you, Anthony. 9 5 Foxtrot Alpha. Well, I'm very quiet at the moment. If I get a DMR contact once a week is about it. And the HF, I've not been on for a few days now. I don't do much, really. There seems to be an awful lot to do in the garden. XYL used to do a lot of gardening. She loves but I'm afraid she can't do as much as she used to, having turned 83 just recently. On D-Day, the 6th of June, or shall we say the anniversary date of D-Day. And so the garden at this time of year has kept us really busy. I've actually got aerials that actually work nowadays with a vertical for 80 to 6 meters, and use that for a lot of FT8, and a long wire, which I used to have doublets and all sorts of things, trap dipoles. This long wire with a slight kink in it at 90 degrees seems to get me out. And I used to lower it in higher wind. Now I don't. I load it for one storm. So
I think a timer got you, Ian.
Kilo Kilo 4, Romeo Yankee Go.
I thought I heard somebody. This is November 7 with the 9H HAM GlobalNet. I think a timer may have gotten to you, Ian. Let's give a pause. Would anybody else like to check into the 9H HAM GlobalNet?
From Alaska, this is Kilo Kilo 4, Romeo Yankee Go from Winter in Anchorage, Alaska. I might come out pretty loud because I'm here at the park strip in downtown Anchorage, Alaska, celebrating the 4th of July. Back to you, Nick.
Okay, I know it's KK4RYG. Happy 4th of July to you. Yes, the background noise is much higher than your voice, but I could pull you through, and thank you for checking in. I'll give it back to Ian. Ian, you were talking about the long wire and the bend at 90 degrees, and I had one exactly like that, and for some reason, both on receive and on transmit, it got me to places I never thought a long wire would ever get me to. I always thought a dipole would perform much better, but I don't know why. This thing just worked, and maybe it's the 90-degree bend. I don't know, but I was very happy with it. So I'll pass the floor back to you. Golf 0, Bravo, India, Alpha, and the 9H HAM GlobalNet. We're talking about DX right now and how to get there and what it's all about. N7APW. I see Ian connected to the to Echolink. Anthony, do you see Ian? Golf Zero Bravo India Alpha?
Jerry, I don't, since I'm connected to two repeaters, Echolink doesn't actually give me a list of individuals connected to each of those two repeaters. It just lists the repeater names. So unless someone is actually talking, in which case his name suddenly comes up next to the repeater he's using, there's no way I can know who is connected and who is not. But I've got the impression that he disconnected because I believe I heard the Echolink disconnected message, and he might not be able, he might be having problems to connect again, I'm not sure. And 780W with the 9H HAM GlobalNet, this is 9 Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha.
Foxtrot Bravo Sierra, Golf Zero Bravo India Alpha connected to you. Do you copy, Charles?
Yes, I do. And the rest of the net is copying you too. Maybe you could get a bit closer to the microphone. You were talking about long wires. We've passed it to you, but I think you got disconnected by the system. Whoops, there he goes. No Ian anymore.
Yeah, that was a disconnect signal again. Charles, what antenna did you use? To get across to Australia, for example, and something else which I'm not familiar with yet is I know there are certain times during the year and certain times during the day even, and certain times during the night when some bands, where propagation is better on some bands than on others. And obviously if there's better propagation, there's also more activity. How does that work? I'm not active on HF, so I'm trying to get active on HF, and it's one of my to-do projects for this summer. So I'm trying to learn. Back to the floor. This is 9 Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha.
Well, it's to have a good aerial, a good antenna. When Jerry started in this same QTH, actually, we had a vertical which we built ourselves. Well, Jerry did the building. I did the holding of the fishing rod. That was it. 3 wires, 10, 15, and 20. Some radials, and we used to get. I used to listen in most of the time because I wasn't licensed yet, and he got as far as Japan and other places. When I started, I got a 3-element beam, and of course I used to point it either long path or short path to go to Australia. Long path would be west, and short path would be somewhere around east, southeast, something like that. But even with a very simple setup, if propagation is good, and I think it is quite good now, you can get contacts with stations all over the world, Anthony.
Yeah, but which bands are usually have better propagation during the night, and which bands have better propagation during the day? I've often heard hams talking about oh, at night you use this band, at day use this band. In practice, without sort of, I mean, I don't know, is the 20-meter band better at night, for example, in terms of propagation? Or is it just a sort of a daily thing which changes and you have to figure out and see what the situation is? Back to the floor. This is 9 Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha.
Well, during the evening and nights, 80, 40, and 30 are very active. During the day, if the maximum usable frequency is there, you could go on to 20, 15, 17, 12, 10. I remember one particular season where we had a three-way contact between Malta, the States, and Australia on 10 meters, which is 28 megahertz, 28 or 29 megahertz. And I have no experience on 17 and 12, but I do have experience with 15, 20, and 10. And if conditions are good, it works during most of the day and even after sunset for some time. But usually after sunset, you go to the lower bands, like 10 megs, 7, and what is 80 meters? 3.5 to 3.8, I believe here. And then if you have a split frequency, you can do split frequency. You can listen up from your transmitting frequeny up to 3.8, and you can put your receive frequency a bit higher and make a cross band QSO with the USA, because the USA go higher than 3.8. But I think Jerry knows more about that than I do, so I'm going to pass it over to him.
Okay, very good, Charlie. This is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey, with moderating the 9H HAM GlobalNet. Thank you for passing it over. Jot me down, Anthony, for a discussion about propagation and DX. I'll be more than happy to do that. I am not an expert, but I've always enjoyed it. And so let me give a pause here, see if there are any other check-ins or anybody else has anything to add before I take off. And it's not going to be a presentation today, but I have some information to share as well, just like everybody else. N7APW, any other check-ins? I keep seeing Ian logged in. I wonder if he's still logged in. Golf 0 Bravo India Alpha with the 9H HAM GlobalNet, November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey. Echolink reports him as online, but he may be having some difficulties. So let me touch on some items, and you may want a pen and paper handy, which I know you always have, Anthony, but Charlie mentioned maximum usable frequency. The maximum usable frequency is the highest frequency you can transmit on that may guarantee you, because it fluctuates, but it may guarantee you that your signal will be carried up to the ionosphere, refracted through the ionosphere, and comes back to Earth. And so it makes your signal go through from point A to wherever point B may ever be, and we don't know that, and that's kind of the fun of HF. And otherwise, if you're operating on a frequency that is not within the maximum usable frequency range, which fluctuates all throughout the day, then obviously your energy or your power will be absorbed by the ionosphere or go straight through, but it won't be refracted back to the Earth. And if it doesn't get refracted back to the Earth, nobody's going to hear you. So that's the way that works. If you look on Google, which I'm sure you are or will, and type maximum usable frequencies, you will find all sorts of charts and predictions as to what frequencies you can use on HF in order for you to establish and make a contact. So, and Charlie said, some of these frequencies are busy during the evenings and etc. Very true. What you have to remember is this: just because you scanned, let's say, the 10-meter band, let me give a pause here. November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey returning. Just because you scanned through the 10-meter band with your radio and heard no one doesn't mean that the band is closed or dead. It just means that since no one is calling CQ, then no one else can hear them because they're not transmitting. And I have actually sat on bands that were labeled as closed for the day and called CQ for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And someone would come out of the blue, even 7, 8, 9,000 miles away, with a very good signal. And we carried on a QSO for 5 or 10 minutes, and all of a sudden, the maximum usable frequency shifts, and they just drop off. And you do too. Needless to say, the most important part of your station is your antenna. I'm sure no one will ever argue that. Followed by power, of course, but then when most people are using, let's say, 100 watts of transmitting power, and you go with 2,000 watts, they'll hear you, but you won't hear them, or you will hear them very, very faintly and have a difficult copy, while they're telling you it's as if you're in the next room. And so I mostly never had an amplifier for shortwave, so that but I did a good antenna. You know, both Charlie and I had beam antennas. Not necessary. Fun to have, nice to have, and the band will stay operational for those people with beam antennas a bit longer than if you had a dipole or a long wire or whatever. But it doesn't mean that one is more effective than the other 100% of the time. Let me pause here. In fact, most people who have beam antennas also have verticals or dipoles, simply because of the angle of radiation from the antenna. The ionosphere circles the whole Earth and is continually there, charged by the sunspot activity on the sun. So the sunspot cycle is about 11 years. So probably within the next year, the activity on the sun, the sunspot activity, will be at its highest. Since it is at its highest, the ionosphere that surrounds a layer of the Earth is mostly charged. The more charged the ionosphere is, the less absorption of power. The less absorption of power, the more your signal is carried, and more of it is carried, giving you a stronger signal at the other end. And 5.5 years later, the sunspot cycle will be at a minimum. The ionosphere will be charged at a minimum, and your communications on shortwave will be a lot harder. I've said enough. I don't think, well, I can go on, but we'll take a pause here. November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey. Did that confuse you or help you any, Anthony?
And 7APW. I have to digest it. The ionosphere reflection is interesting because that's sort of how people go around the globe, basically. Does the position of the antenna, I mean, if it's a vertical or if it's a horizontal or if it's a spider antenna, or does it somehow influence the reflection along the ionosphere or the orientation of the antenna? I mean, you're talking of sort of transmitting in a straight, well, in a more or less straight line until you get the ionosphere and then it's reflected back. Or with a rotating antenna, I mean a rotating beam, for example, affect anything? Could you sort of direct the transmission to a particular country, reflect towards a particular direction? I mean, that's what I'm coming to. Back to the floor and 9H5FA.
Okay. Well, vertical orientation as opposed to horizontal orientation does make somewhat of a difference, but not as distinct on the HF bands as it would be on VHF and UHF. Now, VHF and UHF, if somebody is 20 miles away transmitting on an antenna that's vertically oriented, and you're 20 miles away from him with a horizontally oriented antenna, your signal that you receive from them is going to be a lot less than if both antennas had the same orientation. On HF, what really makes a difference, apart from having a beam as opposed to a long wire, a dipole, or a ground plane antenna, is the angle of radiation towards the ionosphere. Look at the ionosphere just the same way you look at a mirror. So, because it has a lot of characteristics, just like a mirror does, and in fact, when I taught class, this is exactly how I described the ionosphere. The ionosphere is a belt of charged particles at a certain altitude around the Earth that fluctuates, up and down. Not too much, but it does fluctuate. And it refracts everything. But of course, a mirror, while it reflects everything, it also refracts at the same time. And so, if you have a mirror in the middle of the room, and you're standing at one end of the room with a flashlight or a torch, and you aim the the flashlight to the mirror, depending on your position relative to the mirror, is where the reflection shows up on the other side on the wall behind you. And so if you're right at the edge of the room and aim it to the center of the mirror, then it will reflect. And if the mirror is right in the center of the room, then more than likely that beam of light will be right at the other end. Now, if you move away from the wall and still aim that flashlight to the mirror, then the light is reflected, but it's going to be closer to you than what it was when you were at the edge of the room near the wall. And so, you know, oops, 3 minutes, hang on, I'll recycle. And so the images in our mind are closely related. The lower the angle of radiation of an RF or radio frequency signal coming out of that antenna, provided it's on shortwave, it will hit at a lower angle to the ionosphere, will get refracted provided the ionosphere has enough charge in it, and it will go further. And so different antennas have different angles of radiation because of height, because of design, because of obstruction, everything. And so now you may have 2 or 3 different antennas and an antenna switch, and you'll start changing the received signal from a station, let's say in England, and you'll notice that your ground plane is doing okay, and their signal is good. But then when you go to the dipole, their signal is much stronger, and so it's kind of fun to do that. And then obviously beams as well. And the purpose of a beam is to focus your transmission. Not exactly, but like Charlie was saying earlier, you know, there are 2 ways to go from point A to point B in a communication or a contact. One is directly from point A to point B. You know, let's say I'm going from Malta to England. And so I turn my beam so that I beam most of my signal straight over Europe onto England. But since the world is round, and since the ionosphere is all around the world, sometimes you may find that instead of going what is called short path, or the shortest distance between A and B, if you turn it 180 degrees and go the long way, you will find that the signal is even better, which does and doesn't make sense initially, but then it does make perfect sense. Let me give a pause here. We're talking about propagation HF. Please feel free to join. It is an open net. This is November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey. I'm moderating the net today. I'd like to take a pause for everything to recycle. If there are any other check-ins or anybody would wish to contribute, please feel free to do so. This is what a net is all about. November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey standing by.
November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey 9 Hotel to Juliet Golf. I would like to check in, but I'm going to check out as well. I was hearing the conversation between you and Anthony, and I would like to congratulate every single one who just contributed in the last 10-15 minutes. Mike back to not controller. This is 9 Hotel to Juliet Golf.
Anybody else, November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey. Okay, just an FYI, we're changing slightly the format of the net, and we're moving slowly away from a directed net. And so it may be, and we're trying to pick topics that are of interest to people, that also people can contribute to, which then again makes the exchange of information truly more valuable to everybody. But thank you for checking in. Good evening to you. I hope you're doing well. And we'll catch you soon, and keep listening as you can. 9H2 Juliet Golf with the 9H Ham GlobalNet and 7 APWs. If you're leaving, APWs, how many are those? And 7 APW. If you're leaving, have a great evening and check again soon.
November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey, Golf Zero Bravo India Alpha. Have you got any copy on me, Jerry?
Yes, Ian, I copy you loud and clear now. It was kind of interesting, but Echolink was showing you as still logged in, and I gave you a call a few times. You may have heard me, but I couldn't hear you back. But you are loud and clear now. Golf Zero BIA with the group and 7 APW.
November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey. And 9 Hotel 1 FPS, 9 Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha, I think. Is it? I can't quite see. He's disappeared. Never mind. He was there. Anthony was there. Oh, he's there, isn't he? Yeah. My eyesight's going, and this is a very small screen. HI. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So 9 Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha. I'll see you there, Anthony. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't really know what happened. All of a sudden, the computer just said you dropped out. So I actually picked up my DMR radio and called you on DMR and got no answer that way. Then I came back in again, and I couldn't connect to anybody. It was impossible to connect to 9 Hotel 5 at 9 Hotel 1 UHF. Couldn't connect to that. So I don't know really what was happening. So I watched the end of a little program we'd been watching, and I thought, right, I'll just have another go to see if anybody's there. And you're still going. So the vagaries of technology, I would put it down to. But I know you were starting a new subject, which was good. I'll just close with having two memorable contacts in Malta. About 2009, I think it was, I got a schedule with a guy in America at home. And all of a sudden, I'd gone to work in the morning and used to come home for lunch. And on my way home from lunch, I called the travel agent and said, where can I go tomorrow? Because I thought, I'll take a week off. And he said, oh, you can go to Malta if you want. And I thought, well, I haven't been for a long time, you know. So I came home for lunch and said to my ex, well, do you want to go to Malta tomorrow? She said, you what? I said, do you want to go to Malta tomorrow? Well, when do you want to know about it? I said, before I go back to work. So she said yes, and we got our tickets, etc., etc. We flew out, and I still had this sked with this guy in Philadelphia, and I was worried that I couldn't make the sked anyway. Arrived in Malta, went into the Osborne Castile where the licensing people.
Go Zero Bravo India Alpha November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey.
I think Ian got disconnected again. His computer is misbehaving, it seems. to the floor.
Sometimes, you know.
Let's see if he's still there. Golf Zero, Bravo India Alpha, November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey with the 9H HAM GlobalNet.
Go ahead, Ian.
Thanks for that. I'm coming back in on my phone. Anyway, where was I? I was in a two-man lift in the Orsburg to Castile. Went up to see this guy for a license, equivalent for a visitor's license. And he sat at a 6-foot desk with A5 or A4 papers stacked up on either side, as high as himself, you know. Anyway, he said, "Oh, yes, you can have a license, right? Yes." I says, "Any idea how I can get to Sked on, I've got a Sked with this guy in America." He says, "Oh, get in touch with so-and-so." Anyway, I ended up in a farmhouse on the day with a guy, I think his name was Charles, just down from Mdina. And when he invited me in, we went in his bedroom, sat at the end of his bed, and put a call out on a said frequency. And lo and behold, my friend in Philadelphia picked us up, and we had a great QSO. So that was, completely out of the blue that I could do that. Radio work, you sort of think, well, it's going to be there, but the vagaries, sometimes it's not. And I think the other day, last time I was on, I told you about the contact with the 1,000-mile dog sled race in Alaska. And I worked that from Shah in Gozo, one early morning about 5 o'clock. There was only me on, there was no pile up. So, yeah, you can have a lot of fun with radio. I've had a lot of fun over the years. I used to go to my daughter's caravan, which is about 50, 60 miles from here, throw up a doublet, and I've worked guys on Perth Beach. This would be around the 1980s. And then listen to people on 40 metres. And my wife used to call it the doctor's surgery net, HI, because everybody was telling you what you were doing with your pills and that. Anyway, I'll make this a final to you, Jerry and Charles. And I'm glad I've got it. I don't know what it is. My computer just threw us out, but at least it's working on the phone. So I'll hand it to you, Jerry, and then you can sign me out and I'll give you best 7-3s and Alayla Tayeb to those that still speak Maltese. This is Golf Zero, Bravo India Alpha, Mask by the Sea, wishing you all a very good evening.
Well, very good. Before you leave, Ian, let's see how small the world really is when it comes to ham radio. You mentioned a ham right off in Dina. His name was Charlie. Did he live in a farmhouse, and did he have a tower and a beam? Do you remember? Go ahead.
Yeah, that'll be him. You came down if I remember to get to it, you'd come from Rabat, where the buses turn round, in between Mdina and Rabat itself. You'd drop past the Roman fort, and you'd wind your way down on the road, drop past the roundabout and down the short leg, and his farmhouse was on the corner. There's a big tall chap, and if I remember, his hands were like sledgehammers from G0BIA.
That was Joe. In Tarfa, not in Dina, no?
He was, I suppose you would say, he was at the foot of Tarfa.
Yeah, that 9H1HM, he's silent key now, but yeah, he had a beam, okay. He used to make a lot of contacts, Joe. Back to you, Jerry.
here I have a question for you, Charlie. Was Charlie Abala on Malta at that time, and didn't he live close by to that area as well?
I don't know which. I don't know. He said the 80s. I think the 80s it was 9H1HM, and of course he was a farmer, so his hands were very calloused. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because I met Charlie in London in the 80s. In fact, there's a picture on the MorrisNet Facebook. Okay, that's very fascinating. You know, I traveled to Malta a few times in the 80s, and a couple of times I stopped at ham radio operators' place and even used their radio to get on nets, and it's very interesting. You hear the same voices, and you know you're not in the same place. You know you're not at home or in your shack, and yet you're participating in the same net with the same voices. And I always thought that was very fascinating. Ian, I'll see if you have anything else for the net. And thank you, and good evening to you and yours, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Go Zero Bravo India Alpha with the 9H Ham Global Net. This is N7APW.
N7APWG0BI. I've just got my thinking cap on better, and I do believe it was 1991, and then we came again in 92. So 91 we stayed in Malta because we stayed. That's right. We landed at the old Lua terminal, the old what was the RAF at the time then years ago. And when we got outside, because we didn't know where we were going, my wife had said, "I hope we get up to Mdina." I said, "Well, you never know." Anyway, we were met by the representative, and she says, "Oh, you're staying at the what do they call it? Some palace hotel up at Rabat. I forget its name for a moment. I know it's flats now." So we went up there, and I said, "There you are. You can walk into Mdina." So that would be 91, and then 92 was the time when we stayed with an amateur in Shara who had a private pilot's license. He was a Scotsman. I've forgotten his call sign, although if I went through my logbooks I'd find it. He gave me a flight round the island and round Gozo, which was great. I was able to take photographs a bit like Juliet Lima's done for his book. So yeah, that was the year when I did the dog sled race, HI. Anyway, I will wish you a very good night. Thanks for being on. Thanks for being there. Sorry I don't get on as often as I should do, but we'll see you further down. Take care. Golf Zero Bravo India Alpha. Sign in with the Ham GlobalNet for Malta. This is G0BIA.
Kilo 4 Romeo Yankee.
Palace Hotel comes to mind, but I'm not sure that's right, if it was that close to Mdina. So, all right, back to the floor, N7APW. So you get an idea, Anthony, of HF, and the closest thing to HF is DMR. There are differences, and we can actually talk about a bit about that as well. But DMR has spoiled me, and in quite a few ways, especially now that I can't just get on a ladder and put up an antenna. November 7 Alpha Papa Whiskey.
Nine Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha. Yeah, that's true. But you know, DMR is easy. I mean, sort of program your radio with the code plug, put in the talk groups, put in the codes and all the rest of the info, and sort of just write the data to your radio, and you're off to go. HF is much more of a challenge, and probably with a greater reward too, because it's a greater challenge. Yeah, but the markets around the world, and even on a private channel, which is fantastic actually. Back to the floor, 9 Hotel 5 Foxtrot Alpha.
If I might butt in, I like to listen a lot on 91, which is a very busy talk group, and you get people from all over the place. Sometimes, you know, I wake up, let's say 2:30 in the morning, still going strong. Japan, India, the United States, Canada, Australia, because of course they would have already started the day. A very, very interesting side of the hobby, DMR. And of course I'm in no position to put up antennas, and so it's I think it's the next best thing. Jerry, what do you think?
And truthfully, now I've been on DMR for 4 years, and I'm way past addicted. There are differences, and you know, the best verb to use was a challenge, or noun, I should say. It is a challenge. Both of them are a challenge. I think it was, at least for me, it was a challenge to receive a radio that only knew how to turn on and off. And then I had to tell it exactly what I wanted it to do, but the way it wanted it to do it. And there was a local ham. He goes, "Oh, lots of luck to you." And I'm going, uh-oh. Let me give a 10-second pause for all the timers. Anyway, so the first, knowing that it was going to be a challenge just to program the radio to be the radio that I want it to be, the first thing I did after I received the radio was throw the box away, so I couldn't return the radio. And then it took me a couple of 3 days, and you get the hang of it just like you get the hang of everything else, and life is good. Now, there are differences, and there are people who say, well, but it's not really radio. Well, it may not be really, quote-unquote, radio with propagation on HF, etc., but it's still the delivery of a communication between point A and point B, via C, D, E, whichever, but it's still the delivery of information between point A and point B. There are countries that I have contacted on DMR that I never was able to contact on shortwave, whether it was propagation, whether it was 30, 40, 50 years ago, and certain nations didn't even have a ham radio license to issue. And of course, since then, you know, some countries have changed politically, and now they're independent, and they have a new call sign structure, and it's very interesting. For example, before DMR, I had never talked to Tibet. I had never talked to Nepal. You know, I had never talked to Ukraine and Moldova. And interestingly enough, a U.S. possession that I had never talked to because of propagation was Guam. and all of a sudden one day I'm just listening, and the station from Guam came around, and on VMR you don't have to have a big setup with a big antenna and power to be heard. Everybody is just about equal. And so now your chances of making a contact with a station or a country that you want to make contact with, your chances are a lot better. And you had mentioned contests and DX, Anthony, and a lot of people have moved to the digital modes. One that comes to mind is FT8, that allows them to collect the contacts for the certificates and for the awards. And I'm not one of these people who likes to contest. I love DX, but not when there's a contest. On a day like this, that's just a normal day. This is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey moderating the 9H HAM GlobalNet. Any other check-ins at this point in time?
This is Kilo 4, Romeo Yankee Golf, Anchorage, Alaska, USA. Happy 4th of July. Can you hear me? Over.
Yeah, no background noise. Good afternoon to you. Kilo 4, Radio Yankee Golf with the 9H HAM GlobalNet and 7 APW.
Yeah, I'm here in downtown Anchorage in the Park Strip, and we're celebrating the 4th of July, and let me tell you, it is crowded. But, yeah, I'm doing my thing here, so I'll get back to it. I just wanted to drop in and say hello and hope that you guys down in Malta are having a great day. Back to you. This is Kilo 4, Romeo Yankee Golf. Thanks for that control.
All right, well, enjoy the 4th of July festivities. Have a great afternoon and evening, and hopefully we'll catch you soon. KK4RYG. Back to the floor, I suppose. And 7 APW with the net.
And 7 APW 9H5FA. I don't know, perhaps West might be a good sign, but actually we've been going on for 1 hour and 8 minutes. I'm not complaining, but it's sort of just bringing this to light back to the floor.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go QRT, say hello to Renza, and you have a good day. You have Malta, you have Wyoming, and yourself in Alaska. And hope the weather is clement for you during the festivities of the 4th of July. Guys, I'm going to have to say 73s, put my baby to bed here. He was upstairs making a racket. I think I know what it is, you know. We have one of our village festas on Sunday, and there was some ballistic activity going on. Just small ones, but I think his hearing is much better than mine. HI. So I'm going to put the dog to bed, say 73 to everybody, and hope to meet you in 2 weeks' time. 9H1FBS.
Contact with Cyprus. Now, as we all know, VHF and frequencies above are strictly line of sight. But then when there are some certain phenomenon similar to the ionosphere, because the the VHF and UH frequencies just go straight through the ionosphere. The ionosphere does not refract those at all. They go straight through. In fact, even if you go back way back in time, you'll notice that when the space program was very active, whether they were orbiting the Earth or whether they were on the moon, they were using VHF and UHF to communicate between the moon and Earth. And obviously you can still use VHF and UHF to bounce a beamed signal off the moon to another part of the world, or back to another part of the world, because of the wavelengths of the transmission on VHF and UHF. Very interesting. There are so many things, and of course, our friend 9 Hotel 1 Echo Sugar uses some parabolic dishes to beam his very low power signal to a geostationary satellite, and carries on contacts, and I think the frequency is, I won't lie, 1.2, way up there, or even more. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have him give us a presentation on that too. This is November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey. That's the nicest part of the hobby. There are so many areas you can get interested in, and people who have either experienced it or know a bunch about it. And 7APW,
which is also a part of the ionosphere, and that's really fun. Guys, I'm going to have to go. I think I overstepped Jerry there. I stepped over Jerry for a bit. Best 73 to everybody. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time, God willing. Right, each one of you.
Good night, Charlie.
Good night, Charlie.
Let's see, is there anybody else who would like to check in, join in? November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey. I didn't hear anybody. I guess we can officially close today's net. I think it was a wonderful net full of information, and we'll do it again. Like I said, if you wish, jot me down for a presentation. I can do that. Or any other ham. Well, I shouldn't say any. There's no such thing as knowing everything. But some other ham radio topics that I used to teach that still hold, and it will be fun. It's always nice to know how things work. November 7, Alpha Papa Whiskey.
This is Kilo 4 Romeo Yankee Golf. I just wanted to say good night, Mr. Charlie. Talk to you guys soon. This is KK4 RYG. I'm clear.